You're listening to the Platte River Bard.
Today we talk with Hank Stratton. Hank is the director of the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film and executive director of the Nebraska Repertory Theater. Hank comes to Lincoln from the University of Arizona, where he was head of the acting and musical theater and the artistic director of the Arizona Repertory Theater. A graduate of the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, Stratton has served as a guest artist for leading educational institutions around the country, including master classes at UCLA, the University of Michigan, and San Diego State University. He has acted for the Royal Shakespeare Company's Complete Works Festival and was recently awarded the Gerald J. Swanson Prize for Teaching Excellence at the University of Arizona. Now, Hank is a co-founding instructor for 5 days of Broadway, where students of all experience levels from ages 11 to 19 are coached in musical theater performance and technique by some of the industry's leading professional artists and educators. He is a member of the Screen Actors Guild, the American Federation of TV and Radio Artists, Actors Equity Association, American Guild of Musical Artists, SAG-AFTRA, Musical Theater Educators Alliance, and the Society of Stage Directors and Choreographers. Now, Hank is one of those actors that you may not be able to call him by name, but you will know him when you see him because he has been all over TV since the 1980s. Some of his credits include Perfect Strangers, MacGyver, Saved by the Bell, and Murder, She Wrote. But also, he was on Beverly Hills 90210, Frasier, ER, NYPD Blue, The Closer, Desperate Housewives, The Unit, and Hawaii Five-0, just to name a few more. And if you're like me, you may have recognized him from the 1988 movie Demon Warp. I'm just saying. Hank also starred in the Broadway revival and the following PBS on-stage television film adaptation of The Man Who Came to Dinner, opposite Nathan Lane and Gene Smart. And he has a story about that play that involves his mom that's just about the funniest thing I've ever heard. So, sit back and enjoy Sherry and I's interview with Hank Stratton. Hello, and welcome to the Platte River Bard. This is Chris Berger.
And I'm Sherry Berger.
And we are here today with Hank Stratton.
Yay.
He is the director of the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film and the executive director of the Nebraska Repertory Theater. He's also an actor that you have seen before. As soon as you see his picture on this podcast, you will know this guy. He's been in all kinds of stuff.
Many credits to his name.
Oh my gosh, and he's done such a wide variety of things over his professional career. It's such an honor to be able to talk with you today, and congratulations on your new positions.
Yay, welcome to Nebraska.
Lincoln. Welcome to Nebraska, yes.
Thank you so much. I love that everybody that I meet says, welcome to Nebraska. And you know what else? They mean it.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
There's such sincerity and warmth here. I'm having a great time. I've officially marked my 6th week on the job. So
right.
I've got it all down. I figured it all
wow.
out.
Oh yeah,
That's awesome. We're really happy, and we're happy that you're here. I know
Thank you
that
for having me.
I know that they were in a little, they were going through a period of time where they weren't sure what they were going to do, and now you're finally here. So this is great.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've got some exciting programming coming up. We've got great plans for the school, a more integrated approach to what live performance is that is in step with what's actually happening in the industry and training 21st century artists to work in that industry in all kinds of modalities, theater, film, emerging media arts. I just had a very exciting trip to London. It was a fact-finding trip where we met with truly the thought leaders in digital arts, in media arts, in storytelling. I have to give a nod to Industrial Light and Magic because ABBA Voyage is one of the best things I've ever seen. No discredit to anyone that is living, but those holograms are awesome.
Oh my God, yes.
Absolutely. but those are all the kinds of things that we're doing at the Center for Emerging Media Arts, which is also part of the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film, and just finding those ways of collaborating live performance and emerging media arts all in the same place, because we're all storytellers.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That method has been integrating itself into theater as well.
Slowly but surely, you see it more and more and more.
And I noticed
Well, yeah.
even in your season, the shows that you're doing kind of feels that way as well. It's very everyday man kind of situation.
Absolutely. I mean, we want to open the season with something that's going to be a little Valentine to the community and a nod to great literature. I happen to think that Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility is one of the best rom-coms that was ever written, ever.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're trying to put on stage. So it's a little Valentine, but it is a labor of love, and it's buoyant and funny and heartbreaking. The students have an opportunity to work along with actors, Equity Actors, the professional union. So we have 2 guest artists who are just knocking it out of the park and are really functioning as teaching artists as well, which is one of the mission statements of the Nebraska Repertory Theater, that it is the practical classroom and the outward-facing expression of what we're doing during the day in the studio.
That's wonderful. So, are you teaching any classes, or will people just see you in auditions?
Isn't that the $64,000 question? It is very strange not to be in the classroom for the first time in like 10 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you were teaching down in Arizona, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, my journey to university life and this professorship that I find myself in was purely accidental. I was convinced that I would break students and I would ruin lives and create more drama in the classroom than I would on stage. But it felt like a really natural fit. And I had reached a point in my career, and I appreciate all the nice things that you had said, where I was just looking for a little more creative muscle. It's not that I was dissatisfied. It's going to make me sound ungrateful, and I absolutely know the privileged position that I continue to be in as an actor, and I love it. I love being on set. I love being on stage. There's nothing that can replicate the community that you find between creative artists when they gather together in person to do something.
Right.
Yes.
But I just wanted a little more agency, and all of a sudden I was asked to guest direct at the University of Michigan, and for their very esteemed musical theater program, and did a couple of workshops and some coaching and all of that, which put me on the radar of the University of Arizona, and they offered me a couple of guest directing jobs because I was freelance directing. And then after that, the director of the school at the time said, I think this would be a really good place for you. We'd like to offer you a tenured leading position. And my daughter was in high school at the time, and I said, it's absolutely a non-starter for me. She's got 2 more years of high school.
Yeah.
And they made it really hard for me to say no when he said, well, we'll hold it for you.
Wow.
And I was like, I wonder what the universe is telling me. The universe is telling me to pack my bags and go to the desert and maybe try out this teaching thing. And that led into artistic directorship of the Arizona Repertory Theater, which then led me to where I am now, of being the school director for the Johnny Carson School. I look after the Ross Theater that we have here, and the Nebraska Rep.
That's wonderful. And you actually had a mentor up in Michigan as well.
My mentor at Michigan was the great Brent Wagner. Not a day goes by where I don't think, what would Brent Wagner do? He started the programs at Syracuse. He built this incredible training program in Ann Arbor, and he just whisper quiet with all the heavy lifting that he did behind the scenes. And I've met great mentors along the way, and I've been very fortunate to have a lot of support. The current dean of the College of Fine Arts was one of my great mentors and my collaborator at the University of Arizona, which is how I ended up here. When the position opened up, he said, hey, I think this might be a good fit for you. But I learn every day on the job with him, and he feels more like a collaborator than he does my boss. He's essentially my boss, but really he engenders such a collaborative environment for all of us, and all the directors feel that way. All of his staff feels that way. He's amazing. His name is Andy Belzer. He's an incredible theater artist and filmmaker of his own right. But Brent Wagner was was a huge influence for me. In addition to all of the professors and the great theater artists that I trained with when I was in London for 4 years when I was a young actor.
Yeah, because you graduated from.
Well, you left Yale for London.
I did. Yeah, it's like, well,
That's okay.
I turned further right on my way to Yale. I just kept going, so I sort of like drove through New Haven.
Yeah, there you go. You just kept going.
All the way through. Yeah. So, I mean, and my mother never let me forget that my mother never let me forget that I did not go to UCLA and Yale, which were the two universities that I was trying to way behind. But what I did is behind their backs is that I auditioned for all these drama schools. And I thought, well, I'll never get in. Well, I got into all of them. So then I picked and, begged and begged and begged. And I worked long hours and it was the best of times and the worst of times.
Right.
It was truly like exactly the right artistic move for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Did she ever come to be okay with it then? She saw.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my mom?
Yeah, your mom.
Oh, yeah. Let me talk to you about my mom. So my mother just passed away in 2022. I had the great privilege of being able to take care of both my parents during the pandemic and help them transition to the next place where they're now resting comfortably and probably listening to this podcast going, I never said that. But I said something to my mom in just the last year of her life, and I said, I know you wanted me to go to and fill in the blank. And she stopped me and she said, I never wanted you to do anything other than follow your heart. And you wouldn't be the person and the man and the professor and the actor that you are today if you hadn't done exactly that. And I was like, okay, don't cry.
Yes,
But that
that's
was my
amazing.
mom. So you know what? I mean, if anyone is out there listening and feeling like they're not getting support from their moms and their dads and all of that, they come around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need time to regroup too, because her fantasy for me was not what my fantasy was for me. But she did come around. Totally.
It's so common of a story though, and they probably just don't. A lot of people don't think to say it. So that's nice that she did.
Yep. Well, Mom just wants you to be successful and happy. And in the end, I think as long as that happens, they come around.
I think you managed on
Yeah,
the
for
successful part just fine.
Well, that's what she said. Finally,
Yeah.
I mean, but can I just tell us, since she's not here to contradict me, and this is a really true story. This is a true story. There I am on Broadway with my name above the title, and I'm taking my parents to Joe Allen, right? To famous, like bistro in the heart of the theater district, and we're sitting underneath all the posters of all the flop shows, which was the trope there at Joe Allen. It still is.
Yeah.
And we're digging into our burgers in between shows. And my mother says, well, now that the show's open, I think that you should look into an online real estate license. Because you never know. You need something to back. And I'm like, Mom, you just saw me on Broadway with Gene Smart and Nathan Lane, and now you're telling me to get a real estate license?
My name is literally in lights on
Mom,
Broadway.
I can't do any better than this. This is as good as it's getting.
Oh my
Isn't that hilarious?
gosh.
She denied that story.
I love that. But what was it like working with them?
Oh, awesome. I mean, you walk into a room like that and you just you feel like you're on the court with, Nadal and, Rafa. You're just playing tennis with just the best of the best. And the breathtaking thing about working at that level is that they inspire you to do great work. I mean, the great Jerry Zaks was the director, and every time I wanted to disagree with him, I would remember that he had 4 Tonys and I had 0. So I would go ahead and accept the line reading. I would, when he would put his hands around my shoulders and say, "Booby, booby, booby, what is it?" And he would be leading you towards a line reading. I would just remember to humble myself and actually take the note. But I'll tell you that when I walked into the first staging rehearsal with Nathan Lane and he was playing the great Sheridan Whiteside in The Man Who Came to Dinner, he was off book.
Wow.
Day one.
Yeah.
And I'm holding my script,
Yeah.
I've got 30 minutes of stage time and he has 3 hours. And he was off book. I mean, I'm slightly underestimating my importance in that show, but he was off book. And I learned a lot, and that was like learning on my feet in this professional environment, going, this is the expectation. This is the level that we're working at.
For sure.
It was
For sure.
thrilling and fantastic. And I knew Jean Smart, the great Jean Smart.
She's
Look at the
awesome.
work
Oh,
she's
she's
doing.
awesome.
Look at the
Yeah.
work she's doing, and
Yeah.
in the face of a lot of loss. She lost her husband in the last couple of years, but she's just triumphing,
That's
and
right.
she's just
That's
such a
right.
deft, empathic, funny, brave actor. But she was a friend of mine from Los Angeles, so when we were doing a play in New York together, it felt like we were like homies, the sort of like doing
Aw,
Yeah,
yeah, it was
cool.
great. But it was
that's
awesome. It was a
awesome.
real privilege, and then we were able to film that for public television, hosted by
Hmm.
Natasha Richardson and Liam Neeson for this series called,
Yes.
it was on stage series that
Yeah,
PBS
PBS
did.
did that on stage series. Yeah, that was cool. I saw several of those. Probably saw that.
And the director was Jay Sandrich, who did all the Mary Tyler Moore shows,
Oh my
which
God!
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah, he sat in the trailer in the control booth for a week outside on 43rd Street while Jerry Zaks was sitting next to him and running into the theater going, "We're going to have to readjust the blocking," and stuff like that just for the camera.
Cool.
But what a thrill. It was the first time they'd done it. It was their
Oh,
inaugural production.
that's
Wow.
amazing.
And I remember watching Jean Smart and Designing Women, and then just here recently some science fiction. She can just do everything.
Oh,
Oh yeah, she's one of those actresses. Man, she can just do anything. She's so good.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, her work on
Yeah.
Hacks and, just all the rest of the great work that she's doing right now. She's a great actor.
So you've been to the places that your students want to go. So you're a good resource to tell them what things they need to work on or what their strengths are or what their strengths aren't.
I think it's really important that we model and mirror the professional expectations. And oftentimes a student, and there is no pejorative here, there is no right or wrong path for any one student or any one actor, but sometimes they get into the trenches or into rehearsal or deep into the curriculum, and they find that it's not making them happy. And if it's not making you happy, you shouldn't do it. I think that's true of any discipline. But truly, the students that tend to respond to me when I'm recruiting a new candidate for a training program tend to want to, in the way that we were just talking off camera, or not off camera. I'm sitting here looking at you guys on a Zoom call. Forgive me. We were talking off mic about all the careers that I admired and how I wanted to model myself on those. And I feel really privileged
Yeah.
that there are some students that are looking towards my career and wondering how I did it. And I can give them that in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But also being mindful that in this day, we are meeting a moment where we are responding to crises that were ignored before. I'm assuming that we're all around the same age, that when we were in college, there was a disregard for mental health and some wellness and some best practices that are really being demanded, not only in the industry, but definitely in academia right now. And we're trying to meet that moment really well, while maintaining high standards, professional rigor, artistic expectations. And the minute you take your foot off the gas with expecting any of those from the students, you will hear about it. I have had students say, hold me accountable.
Yeah.
Because I would assume their fragility, and they would come to me and say, oh no, hold me accountable.
Yeah.
And I love that. That tells me that that's an artist.
Yes. And they're there for exactly the right reasons, for the right thing.
For sure. And the two of you are actors and theater artists and stage managers and producers and board members and all of that. You know firsthand the difference between, oh, it's good enough tonight and it's not good enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, and I'm not trying to engender or support perfectionism, but I am saying that the day that I walk into the rehearsal or the performance and I say, I'm done, I'm cooked, I think I should hang up my character shoes. I just don't think that's good art.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. No.
I think it's great to bring your best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was
There
good.
is a misunderstanding of the great depth of talent that is all over the country and all over the world. And I've had the great privilege of working regionally. And you'll walk into these markets, whether they're Atlanta or Austin or Washington, D.C., Boston, wherever it is, Los Angeles, Seattle, you will find an absolutely deep pool of talent. And I'm talking about
Yes.
artists, and I'm talking about actors and singers and musicians. It always makes me think of that Joni Mitchell song For Free. That I slept last night in a good hotel and he's playing for real
Yes.
good for free, and I'm not saying that anyone here is working for free, because I believe that artists should be paid. But
Yes, please.
but there is a misunderstanding about regional markets, and it's one of the reasons that we can shoot locally in Nebraska, or if it's in Atlanta, that there's real talent out there, and you don't have to go to the coast.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what I wanted
No.
to do. I sort of like really aim my arrow high, and I encourage students to do that, especially when they're young. It's like, you're not going to want to live like a puppy when you're 40. You're going to want to do that
Right.
when you're 25. You can live in a shoebox, whatever it is,
Sure.
and give it a shot, because somebody gets the job. I know the odds are stacked against you, but why not you? It's one of my
Right.
Exactly.
catchphrases. It's like, well, if there are too many people that are auditioning for this, and it's like, yeah, and they're going to pick one. Why not you?
Right.
Yeah. Why couldn't it be you? Yeah, exactly.
Why shouldn't it be
not
you?
Yeah. But that's true.
Yeah, and if I could, I mean, I'm so embarrassed by your long introduction about me, but I also want to nod towards the colleagues that I have here in the Emerging Media Arts
sure.
Center. I mean, we have incredible depth of talent here. That's like anywhere from like NASA engineers to MIT professors to
Oh my God, yes.
the research that's going on here. But the same is true in the theater school as well. That we've got a cohort of working professionals that are modeling that experience every day and bringing their depth of experience, not only in academic theater and in academics, but also in the professional workplace too.
Absolutely.
I'm very, very privileged. It's one of the reasons that I came here.
Well, and we've been up there several times, and we've talked to several different folks up there, and we talked to Tim about all the different theater people they have, and they, oh yeah, so and so used to do this and worked on this show and worked on this Broadway thing and blah blah blah. Oh yeah, they're a professor
sure.
here, and it's like it's just constantly amazed. Oh, and they got Hank. Well, of course they got like somebody like that because it makes sense. They have been amassing all of these people with this huge sort of depth of experience, which is all being passed on. To all the students.
For sure. And just to build on that, I'm looking at the legacy of the Nebraska Repertory Theater, and I'm looking at the directors and the designers and the actors that have worked there, because I have access to all those files. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, X, Y, and Z. I can't even turn a page without recognizing so many names and being feeling so fortunate to be part of that legacy, and knowing that my friends have come here before, and I've received a huge amount of support, outpouring of texts and phone calls saying, oh, I worked there in fill in the blank of the year or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, we're so excited for you. They're so lucky to have you. You're lucky to have them. All of it. It's just been
nice.
incredible. And if I could just talk about Johnny Carson for just a second.
Oh, please, yes.
That is a thrill to be sitting at a desk with his, they have the coffee mug from The Tonight Show on the desk of the director of the Johnny Carson School.
Do they
I've
really
got
get that?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I'm so jealous.
I'm like Instagramming it all the
Carson.
time, because Johnny Carson, actually, if you really look at this, Johnny Carson was a tastemaker. He was a career maker. He forged the careers of unknowns that we now are common household names, like Jerry Seinfeld, by inviting them to the sofa, right? And in a way, we're doing that yeoman's work as well, of like matriculating and bringing in young artists and curating their talent and telling them that they can do it, giving them a start.
Right.
Whether it's a 4-year start or a 4-minute start in the case of The Tonight Show. I mean, that is a real privilege.
It is.
It is.
And the foundation has been extremely supportive, extremely generous. I'm meeting them in Los Angeles in October, and I can't wait to shake all of their hands and thank them for their support of the arts.
For sure.
Wow.
And carrying on Johnny's legacy, because he loved this school and it changed his life. And he wanted to make sure that it changed other people's lives that grew up in, also paying heed to the land grant mission statement that we have here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Sure has.
I just get very impassioned about it and a little teary.
No,
I love
it's true.
it. It's true.
And it's very meaningful when you have folks who, for lack of a better term, folks who know what they're talking about say, hey, you can do this, you're good at this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To that, I owe a huge debt of gratitude and thanks to those that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
yes.
And those were mostly mentors and teachers and classmates and cast members and, anyone from Elton John to, Anne Marie McMiniman, who was my drama teacher in high school, so I just really, that's part of why I love what I do, because I feel like I'm paying that back
Yeah.
and paying it forward
Yeah.
at the same time.
Absolutely.
This beautiful season of Sense and Sensibility, Mr. Burns, we're doing a beautiful Annie Baker play called The Flick, and then we're ending with a musical that is a collaboration between the Glencore School of Music and the Johnny Carson School, both sides of the street, the Emerging Media Arts and the theater school. This musical is going to come together as a labor of love and a collaboration between those three producing entities, those stakeholders. It's going to be beautifully designed with projections and a full orchestra and all of it. So I'm really, really excited. It's a beautiful piece if you've never seen it.
I've seen the movie. It's Big Fish. I've seen the movie a long time ago, probably around the time it came out. It's been that long. I have not seen the play, or the musical, rather.
It's a gorgeous score by Andrew Lippa, and and he's actually an acquaintance, so I'm hopefully going to be able to convince him to talk to some of the students.
Ooh.
Via Zoom, because one of the things that the pandemic taught us is that there's connectivity all over
Yes.
the globe. So
Yes.
we can Zoom people in, and it's very influential and very impactful. for their
Yeah.
lives.
We've spoken to some writers over the last year or two that sort of started happening with them, and they're really fine with it. People seem to be hesitant to reach out, and they're like, no, yeah, please do.
Yeah, people think you can't ask.
Yeah,
like
you can ask.
Oh, they'll never call me back. It's like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Make the call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Send the email.
The worst I can think is say
You'd
no.
be surprised how we love to talk about ourselves,
That's the
don't
thing,
we?
I know. You're asking a writer to talk about their work? Of course they're going
Yeah.
to. Yes, they're going to want to tell you about it. But
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So we're starting off the season with Sense and Sensibility, and we're ending it with Big Fish.
this is the Sense and Sensibility. This is a newer adaptation by Kate Hamill. I think it was done around 2016. So a newer adaptation.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful, I mean, with total respect to
Yeah.
the original source material, it's episodic. It's almost cinematic in her adaptation. It's all on the page. And what we're trying to do is realize that in the production, not only in the production values. The set is flexible. I don't want to give anything away.
Sure.
It's incredibly designed. I mean, the students are doing such good work. They're rising up to those professional standards that we're setting for them. It's beautifully directed. The sound design is coming into place fantastically. We're adding costumes on Saturday. I can't wait to see all of those
Cool.
designs as
Fun.
well. The master's student that has designed the lights is poetic and elegant, and is also adding contemporary elements to it, which I think is part of the playwright's intention, that contemporary elements are colliding with those classical ideas as well. So I can't wait for you guys to see it.
Very nice, very nice.
It will be very surprising.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful.
And this next one, I had not heard of this one. And I was reading about it online, and I must see this. It's called Mr. Burns, a post-electric play. I've not heard of this before. Sounds amazing.
Were you a Simpsons fan?
Oh my God, yes.
Yes. So
And I absolutely do, because I saw the way it was spelled, and I was like, that's the Sideshow Bob episode.
And it's totally the Sideshow Bob
Yes.
episode. And I'm not going to give anything away, but we were in a production meeting this morning arguing a little bit about how to present the car. and what happens with the car, and
Oh my God.
and I'm like, well, we got to have the car.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's mission critical to the episode. I mean, it is, but it's actually, I mean, since you don't know the play, I'll be really curious to hear your thoughts. It's really poignant as well.
It sounds like that because it's post-apocalyptic, so they're sort of remembering like the entertainment that they had from before the apocalypse, this generic apocalypse, which this thing happened because it's not about the apocalypse, it's about what happened afterwards. No. So it happened, and now they're in there and they're remembering all this stuff, and of course it's not quite right. And then I guess it takes place over several years, so over time the play and the story sort of morphs and changes into something else, and by the end you have something that's completely different but yet very meaningful in a big way.
It adds up to a real sort of arresting idea, and you end up very effective. You think you're just going to go in and it's going to be, oh, it's all silly, and not silly, it's all satiric, but it actually it takes this turn and really grabs you. It's being beautifully realized by our artistic director, our interim artistic director, David Long, who's also the head of our performance faculty, and he had done the play at his previous artistic directorship when he was in Texas, in Austin, and he's completely reimagining. You know, he doesn't want to do the same thing twice, so he's reimagining how to do it, which really tells us how good the play is, because you can do it in any kind of way.
I must see it.
And I think when I was doing a little bit of research on Anne Washburn, who is the playwright for this play, she's done at least a dozen plays and won awards. She's won a Guggenheim. And she was inspired to write this play because of 9/11.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm proudest of, and I said this to my colleagues when I joined the faculty, is that I was so impressed with the conscious effort to represent female writers and address the issue of gender inequity in the theater. So we not only have source material from one of the greatest authors of all time, but the adaptation is by a female writer. Mr. Burns was written by a female writer. The play we're about to talk about, Annie Baker, she wrote the flick. It's I mean, the representation is unmissable. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, and speaking of the flick, I've heard of it, but I didn't know much about it. And reading the reviews of it, it's actually quite funny. What were they saying? Never has so much been said with so little dialogue. The reviews are overwhelmingly positive.
It's interesting because I wonder what those same critics would have said about Harold Pinter, because Annie Baker's style. I saw a gorgeous production at the National Theater in 2019 of her play called The Antipodes. Some of the most magical stagecraft I've ever seen, and it all takes place in a boardroom where they're all trying to ideate the next idea of advertising. But Annie Baker's writing is very spare, and it's one of the reasons that it's such a good acting. There's such good scenes for actors.
Yes,
what you were about to say
about this. Reading about this, that's one of the things that it struck me, is that this is like an actor, quote unquote, an actor's sort of play that. There may not be a lot of dialogue, but there's a lot that happens, and the dialogue that happens is extremely important. And I don't know. It sounds like they're catching a lot of behavior, and very interesting.
It's a banquet of subtext.
Yeah. Yes.
It's really
that's
spare.
What it sounds like. Yeah.
And it also teaches young actors that it's like the pause isn't the purpose. The pause is for the thought. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to drive your thought. You've always got to be on intellectual horseback the whole time, and you can't rely on text in the same way that you do in other contemporary dramas. She's a brilliant playwright.
Yes. No, I heard about it, but I didn't know about it, and I'm fascinated to see it. What a fun piece to do as an actor too.
Yeah,
totally,
absolutely.
Holy cow!
And then you're going to end in April with Big Fish.
With Big Fish,
You're
which we
musical.
talked a little bit about.
Yes, indeed.
Well, do the other plays have any musical? I thought I saw a little bit of music.
Well,
in one
Mr.
of them.
Burns has quite a bit of music in it.
There is music in that one,
there isn't a lot of of necessarily like show tunes,
Right.
but we actually made a joke in the production meeting this morning that it's like the musical version of The Simpsons, and I'm like, are we talking about this play? Because we don't have an orchestra. And they were like, no, we're sort of being hypothetical and sort of being a little bit glib about that. But it's fantastic, and again, just to touch on Big Fish one more time, it's such a sweet story of father and son and tall tales, and what part of history is accurate. And the movie, I don't know if this is stupid, you'll probably edit this out, but Billy Crudup starred in the film, along with
Albert Finney.
Albert Finney.
Yeah.
And Billy Crudup and I were apparently like separated at birth, because a lot of people are like, "You're so Billy Crudup." Oh my god. I'll get that, and I'll get Aaron Eckert, and I'll get all kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay.
Christian Bale. I'll tell you a little story about Christian Bale in a second. Okay. But awesome. Billy Crudup was in the film, and when he did the morning show, I would get texts from my friends going, he's stolen everything from you. And I'm like, well, we kind of came up at the same time, so and we've never really met. We met once at Lincoln Center, but he didn't really steal anything. It's just that we have this similar energy. And I always feel like I should play Bryan Cranston's son and Billy Crudup's brother.
Oh my God.
But I was at the Beverly Center in Los Angeles. You'll edit this out, but I want to tell you this story that I was with my kid, It sort of speaks to your sort of like, I know that guy.
Yes.
I had these two young teenagers just around the time that Christian Bale played Batman come running up to me at the Grove in Los Angeles, California. And my daughter Kate and I were waiting for a movie. And they went, you, we want your autograph. And I was like, oh, wow. They want my autograph. Right. And so I signed, and they looked at it, and they were Hank Stratton. They said, we want the real one. And then my daughter said, he's not Batman. He was on Saved by the Bell. Okay? And I'm like, of all the credits, you're going to pull that one out? And she went like this. Well, Dad, I have some bad news for you. They recognize you more from Saved by the Bell than they do from your Broadway career. Hilarious.
Oh, my gosh.
Hilarious. I get no respect at home.
That's
sorry.
so funny.
But it's good, though, because then you get to walk amongst everyone and not have to be chased.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
Which is
absolutely. I do walk amongst everybody. I was in Paris, and we walked into our Airbnb, and the woman that was the land keeper, or what do you don't call them that? Anyway, she was the landlord.
Oh yeah.
Was taking us around, and she was like, and here is the bath, and here is the kitchen, and I know you, don't I? And I'm like, it was like 7 a.m, right? And she goes, I have seen you, yes. And I was like, well, I'm an actor. And she goes, I knew it, I know you. And I'm like, I'm famous in Paris.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, my traveling companion just, he was the dean that I work with now. He just rolled his eyes and he's like, oh boy, here he goes.
Here we go.
That is awesome, though.
No.
Well, and it looks like an awesome season.
Yes.
And so how is this for you? So I haven't ever been in a university where I was a business major, so it's all foreign to me. So how do you put together a season as opposed to how a community theater season would put together?
No, I think that's a really good question, because you have to take in, it's all student-centered. Mm-hmm. So as opposed to just trying to program for your community, you are trying to program for your community, but at the heart of that is you are meeting your pedagogical agreement and your contract with your students. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you're sitting around a table and you're saying, well, we've got 6 plays. Let's just say 6 plays. We want to do we want to make sure that it makes sense and that it's coherent and that it's entertaining, but it's also ticking all the pedagogical boxes. So I've got this actor that's ready for this stretch. I've got that actor who's ready for this. But what do the designers need? So we did a 30s play at the end of the season last season. Let's not do something in the 30s to the 50s. Let's do something on Pier. Let's do, let's do a Scottish play. I can say Scottish play or Macbeth. There's no theater anywhere. anywhere near.
No.
That's modern dress, or do you need that to be Gothic? What do you need? Do we need to build do we need a play that will support realism, modern realism, the kitchen sink drama, or do we need something more expressionistic where we've got a lot of negative space and we're flying units in? Do we need projections? It's one of the reasons that Big Fish came up, because we need to incorporate emerging media into the live performance setting. And it's pastoral and it's beautiful and it's like they're like paintings.
Yeah.
So there are all of those considerations, and at the same time trying to meet the moment of representation and really, really confronting the ways that artists and actors and students feel marginalized and underrepresented, and really bringing those voices, amplifying those voices in your season. It's our responsibility as theater artists to do that. And it's a demand from our students, and they will hold us accountable for that. So there's that, but we also have to bring audiences along with that. The thing that I think audiences don't want anymore, or ever did, was to feel like they're being lectured, or to feel like they're in school. I was privileged enough to do a play called Angels in America, and Tony Kushner, the playwright, was as it was moving away from Broadway and the national tour and, all the regional, he sat in on a lot of the rehearsals. And one of the things that he reminded us all of is that at the end of the day, this play is entertainment, that we come into the theater. Of course, we come in for evangelical purposes. We come in for congregative purposes. It's congregational. But at the end of the day, it is our responsibility to entertain.
Yeah.
And don't start being precious with the material, honor it and be serious about it, but it can't be precious, because at the end of the day, it's entertainment.
Right.
Yes.
And it's still a balance. So you're still balancing, the kind of theater that you want to do, and also catering to your demographic, because you need, money, bottom line, and trying to balance that. You don't necessarily have as much pressure as maybe a community theater would in that sense to bring in.
We are fortunate, but one of the things that is often misunderstood in the academic theater world is that ticket sales do support the curriculum.
You're right.
That it's centered in that way, but that does not mean that we're not going to take risks or fulfill our contracts to the students. We're going to put curriculum forward every single time over commerce.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But it's really interesting, and we're sort of, I can't believe we're still talking about the pandemic, but it was a life-changing event.
It was.
The culture is out of the habit of going to the theater. I hope that's not what you all are finding.
We have found that in the past, but this year,
the summer kind of changed, I think.
Yes,
they're coming back,
year,
aren't they?
Yes, they are.
That's awesome.
No, and I was telling this story to somebody the other day, that I was doing a production of The Rivals, the Sheridan Restaurant and Comedy in Washington, D.C., and I had a director give me one of the best acting notes in my early 30s. He said, "You're making the choices of a boy, and this is a man." And I was just, I've never heard it that way. All he was asking me to do was stand still. And it was such a good acting note. It was such a good acting note.
That's a better acting note than stand still. Yes.
Much better acting note. And just to give you another one, and you're welcome. I'm giving this gift to you. I did a Diet Coke commercial. I am unapologetic about how many commercial spokespersons I have been.
That's awesome.
But I was playing the newly elected president of the United States in the Stay Extraordinary Diet Coke campaign.
Yes.
And we were filming at the Fabulous Forum, and I was it was such a long story. I'll tell you sometime over a beer, but the director of the commercial wanted to give me a note about how quickly I was walking, and he wanted me to slow down. So he came up to me in between takes and he said, "Hey, Hank, you're the president of the United States. You're never late." And walked away. And I went, that is genius, because he gave me an acting note and it affected my physical life, my tempo, my inner life, my subtext, and it allowed him to get his shot. because
Yeah.
they were
Yes.
busy chasing. It was on a Steadicam. They were like chasing me through the halls of the Fabulous Forum in Inglewood, California, where the
Oh, that's
Lakers were playing
awesome.
at the time, and it was
I,
amazing.
Oh, wow.
I actually think I remember that commercial.
I don't.
Well, it ran on the Oscars, and it was on the
Yes.
Super Bowl, and it was
I'm
it was.
pretty sure I remember that commercial.
Yeah. Listen, if we get drunk enough one night, I'll like pull it up on YouTube and I'll show it to you.
I think that's great. I'm going to go looking for it.
I put my daughter through college on that Diet Coke.
That's
commercial.
awesome.
Yay!
Good for
Hey,
you.
yeah,
Oh, sure.
exactly. Go
Oh,
for
sure.
it.
Yeah. No, one of the most eye-opening things I ever saw was when Michael Caine started coming out with his book and talking about it. He's like, you know why I did Jaws the Revenge? Because it paid for my house in Florida. That's why. He goes, I got a house
ding,
out
ding,
of it.
ding.
Yeah, and he's like,
Right?
He's like, yeah, you do stuff because it's good material, and you do that. But you also do stuff because, you might like the people that are on the project, and it pays a lot of money, so you do it.
Yeah.
Because you like the people. The project may be meh, but the people were sure nice, and you sure got paid well.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
a working actor. And it's like, it was so refreshing to hear that. It's like, we don't have to be artists 100% of the time. Sometimes you got to pay the bills too.
Well, I tried to be a music major, and my dad said, "You better find something else to do."
He was that parent that said, no arts for you, kid. Yeah.
I know these parents out there. I hope these parents are listening. It's like so many of you have said to me, well, what if my kid doesn't make it on Broadway? What happens with this BFA in acting or BFA in musical theater or design? And I said, you know what they have? They have an incredible education and a degree from an R1 institution in critical thinking.
Yeah.
That's what they have. And if you don't think that's a marketable skill, let me sit down and tell you how wrong you are.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and
it's critical thinking.
yeah. Well, and as you know, and as we well know, and people who are doing it, there's more to being an actor or director or whatever than being on Broadway or being in a movie or being on a TV show, and so the wide range of things that you can do in this quote unquote business, whatever profession,
For sure.
incredible.
Yeah, and now more than ever, I mean, young artists are hyphenated. They're actors, writers, content creators. They're business people. I mean, one of the smartest things I saw, Josh Brolin, who Hank Stratton and Josh Brolin are not parallel terms, but we did sit in an awful lot of audition rooms together, and I just always saw him knowing that he needed to be a business. And Tom Cruise knew he needed to be a business, and so did Diane Lane, and so did Sandra Bullock. They all knew. Denzel Washington knew that he needed to be a business, and it's really, really, really important to always instill that. So you were saying you were a business major, and it's like, I think every actor should take a business class, and every business major should take an acting class, so that we can learn from each other.
I agree.
Yeah, especially with the actor part, taking some business classes. That is very helpful. That is very helpful.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, wow, it is such a privilege to talk to you. And
You guys are awesome.
we are so
I'm
glad
gonna
you're here.
I'm gonna come see your play.
Oh.
Let's plug your play too. You're doing The Nerd.
Yes, we're doing The Nerd. When does that start?
October 14th.
14th,
Yeah.
Saturday the 14th.
Through the 29th.
Oh my gosh, it's coming up. It's coming
yes.
up.
Yeah.
And everybody
indeed.
come and be with us at the Nebraska Repertory Theater.
my
I
gosh,
plan on
yes.
doing an awful lot of curtain speeches, so please, I encourage all of you
that's
out there listening
wonderful.
to introduce yourself. I'm really anxious and ready to get to know the community as much as I possibly can. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you're going to do a curtain speech every night, not just the first night.
Apparently.
You know.
Oh,
No,
maybe.
it's my way of sort of introducing myself to our audiences and just letting them know
Right.
that they are welcome in our theater, and I want to get to know them.
That's great. I always love curtain speeches.
Yep, I like it.
I've always loved it.
I promise it won't be long.
That's all right.
Brevity is the soul of wit. I promise it will not be long.
It's all good. Well, welcome to Nebraska. We are just so honored to talk to you, and we hope to talk to you again.
Thank you so much.
This is going to be
real
a great
privilege talking to you
season.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Hank Stratton for talking with us today. Also, thank you to the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Film and the Nebraska Repertory Theater. The Nebraska Repertory Theater's 2023-2024 season is as follows. It starts with Sense and Sensibility. That's by Kate Hamill, based on the novel by Jane Austen. That runs from September 28th to October 7th in the Howell Theater. Next up is Mr. Burns, a post-electric play by Anne Washburn. That starts on November 9th and runs through November 18th in the Studio Theater. After that, starting on February 29th and running through March 9th, is The Flick by Ann Baker, and that will be presented in the Studio Theater. And rounding out their 2023-2024 season is Big Fish. This is based on the novel by Daniel Wallace, music by Andrew Lippa, written by John August, book by John August. It's Big Fish. It's being presented in the Howell Theater on April 25th and running through May 4th. For tickets, go to nebraskarep.org.
Thank you for listening and supporting the arts in the Platte River area and beyond. Please subscribe to our podcast so you are sure to catch all of our future episodes and join us on social media. And if you like our content and would like to buy us a cup of coffee, you can do so at Ko-Fi, that's ko-fi.com/Platte River Bard. See you next time on the Platte River Bard.